It was about 3:30 or so in the morning before my father actually got to the apartment where we were at. My mom was not there. When my sister had been talking to my dad on the phone, updating him on what happened and why we fled and where we were, but to leave his office slowly and to not say anything to anybody, to not raise any alarms, he had gotten a knock on his door, and it was Father Chicheto. He hung up the phone and said that he would do exactly as we said, and he would come to us, but he had to make sure that he could come to us without being followed. And he said that we were safe already being outside the city walls, the Vatican City walls, so we just stayed put. And we expected him to get there a lot sooner than he did, but it turned out that we just ended up falling asleep, being so exhausted from everything. And when we were woken up with my sister's friend telling me my dad was there, it was 3:30ish in the morning or something like that. I felt so bad this whole time because, I have a family to return to, but I could see this lost look in Tori's eyes because you have to imagine, for him, his whole world was destroyed. He had already lost everything that he loved. It was gone forever. His family. He had no family, and the only family that he had was the priesthood. And now in this situation, he was going to lose even that. He couldn't imagine what life was going to look like outside of the priesthood because, in essence, they were the only family that he had. They were the only people that were supposedly guiding him on his process through life and being somewhat parental in a way, but it was, a really messed up type of parental, right? Because it's more like he was indebted to the church or something. He was in servitude to the church, but it was the only thing that was close enough to what being parented might feel like, but there was no personal connection that they had towards him. And now he's in this situation where everything has changed, and not only that, but he was betrayed by the people that were supposed to be taking care of him at the worst time of his life, having suffered so much. And here they were trying to kill him and get rid of him, and he didn't even understand why. None of us did. When my father came in, the look on his face, it was like he had turned gray with black around his eyes, and it was like he was drained out of any type of energy in his body. And it just, if you could put a picture on it, it's what gloom looks like in a person. I mean, his whole being was dark, and it was scary and of no comfort to either one of us, because here we needed somebody to tell us everything was going to be okay, and the person that was the messenger looked so dark and bewildered, and we were just scared with what he was going to tell us. We needed to feel protected, and we just didn't in that moment. As my father sat down and recounted the story, we just sat in quiet fear and holding our breath. I don't even know how to explain what was going on with us, but the look in Tori's eyes was just so sad, because he looked so lost, and that look of a shelter animal. It's the only thing I can think of, when you see them and they have no home, they have no person that is responsible to love them and care for them, and they're just out in this big, ugly world by themselves. And that's what Tori looked like, the sadness and the fear and just feeling totally alone. And I kept holding his hand and telling him, Tori, you're not alone. I swear, no matter what, you have a home with us. You have a home with me. I will never leave your side. I will always be your family, no matter what happens. We just have to listen to what my dad has to say and and figure this all out, but my dad will figure this out for us. And he seemed to be comforted, but that fear just lingered, and justifiably so. I mean, that was just my reassuring words, but what did I know up against the Vatican? When Father Cicetto knocked on my dad's door, this ensued an extremely long conversation. My father entered into a conversation with Father Cicetto, who was asking if we had seen Father Tori, and if he was asking questions about where I was, and he was asking a lot of questions about if my father had seen Tori. And of course my father hadn't seen us, so he wasn't lying in saying that. But it ensued a very long conversation where it was obvious that through my dad, Father Cicetto could get to me, and through me get to Tori. So there had to be some sort of communication and truth between them to talk about what was going on. And my father didn't tell me the entire conversation, but what he did tell me is that the conversation went from the office, the administration office, saying that the bishop wanted to speak with him. And when my father went in and talked with the bishop, there were a lot of other high-ranking officials in the Vatican that were there, and it was very intimidating. And without going into every detail with us, he let us know that Tori had seen something he wasn't supposed to see. My father, in no uncertain terms, let them know that he was not going to reveal where Tori was or where I was, that they were outside the Vatican walls, and that if anything should happen to any of them at all, people would go right to the FBI to explain. They would go right to the authorities to explain what was going on, to keep them protected. That he had no interest in revealing personal details about the church, and he could assure that Father Tori, or future Father Tori, and myself had no interest in revealing church things. We simply wanted to be safe. And so they spent many, many hours deciphering how they could let us walk away, while at the same time trusting that Tori would not reveal the private information. Now, Tori had no idea that he was a witness to any information, or that he held any secretive information. He simply walked in on a conversation he was not supposed to hear. And that conversation had to do with the missing Vatican girl. It was assumed by those in the room that Tori had heard the details. And now we could surmise that they decided that to keep the church protected, they had to get rid of future Father Tori. This is why Father Cicetto took him into that secret back room and forced him to get into a coffin-like box. And they had fully intended to leave him there to die, to protect their secret. Now, my father agonized with them for a long time. They had him, but he also had them. So in a way, it was a truce, right? Because the moment that something happened to my father, or if my father were to disappear, we were already in safety, and we absolutely would have gone to the authorities to reveal everything that had happened. So instead, the Vatican decided that it was a truce, and with some threats, like, remember that the long arm of the Catholic Church is very powerful. And saying things like the church has eyes everywhere. Giving that threat that we have a lot of power and we can just kind of make you disappear or make something happen to you if you open your big mouth. In essence, that's what it was. So because they seem to be even and each have something on each other, my father wanting to keep our safety and them wanting to keep the story quiet and within the Vatican walls, there was a truce. Now, the Vatican immediately removed us from our living quarters. They removed us and said we had to leave and that they would put us up somewhere else outside the Vatican walls, which of course we refused. Why would we want to let the Vatican know exactly where we are? But we were under no illusion that they didn't know or wouldn't know where we were going. They were right. They have a very long and powerful arm, and they do have eyes everywhere. It's global. We had a vested interest in shutting up, and they had a vested interest in not harming any of us after they already tried to do it to Father Tori. It's shocking to even think about. Here it is, an institution that's supposed to represent going out into the world and spreading the good news of the kingdom, God's kingdom, of hope and light and saving graces. And because of some back-end, dirty, shady business practices, they were willing to destroy one of their own. They were willing to literally lock a man in a box and leave him there. A young boy who was already devastated, an orphan. They were willing to do that to him. And the contradiction of the fact that they were willing to do that, but they are so against abortion and all that, it just boggles the mind. It boggles the mind that they could be that contradictory, but they were. So we never walked into those walls ever again, and I never will. Tori stayed with us, and he became like a brother to me. We moved outside of the Vatican walls that moment. We packed up all of our stuff. My father packed up all of our stuff. We were not allowed to even step 1 foot back into the Vatican City. My father moved us into a random hotel in the city to not take advantage of my sister's friends who were harboring Catholic fugitives for 24 hours. And we stayed there for a couple of days until my father got our family completely moved out and into another apartment. And Tori became like my brother. And he was no longer alone. He no longer was homeless. He literally had a mother and a father in my mother and father. They took him in like their own. I refused to let anything else ever happen to Tori, and I was indeed every bit a sister to him, like a big sister, not letting anything happen to him. A hands-off agreement was made. They stay out of our business and we stay out of theirs. They offered Tori another church that he could go and train in, and he refused. My father was offered a job in another administrative office, and he refused. Any connection that any of us had with the Catholic Church was over the moment that we got out of the catacombs and we were safe. We had something on them and they had something on us. Now, why can I talk about it now? It's been a long time ago. We were 15 when that happened. I'm now in my 50s. Tori's in his 50s. All the priests that were old and alive at that moment, they're gone. Now it's just a memory and a story. And yes, of course, the church has records. They know who we are, and they will always know who we are. And most likely they know where we are too. I'm certain that they've kept track of us over the years. I wouldn't even be surprised if they've bugged our homes whenever we moved from place to place. So you might want to know what happened to Tori. Well, Tori did not become a priest. He became a doctor instead. He wanted to be able to learn everything that he could learn. And he went into pediatrics so that he could help the little children to feel safe and to heal, probably in the way that he needed to feel safe and to heal. He is the most saintly doctor that you could ever imagine, and I would trust him with my life. And to think that that young man, for no reason at all, could have ceased to exist because he walked in on a conversation he shouldn't have heard. So the questions that I get often are, how is he doing? How is Tori doing? Well, I'll tell you this much. He's got a pretty cozy, comfy life. He's a doctor. As I said before, he's married now and has a little boy of his own. And I am proudly not only the best aunt in the world to Tori's son, but I'm also the godparent. And when we say godparent, I take that serious. God has everything to do with it, and he'll keep us safe. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for watching this 4-part series. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and come back often.